What if Mega Salamence was in Gen 1 OU? Now, for those of you who remember, when I did the original Salamence, he suffered. Like, don't get me wrong, he has really good stats. He has high attack, high special attack, has really good speed, a good mix attacker, but unfortunately, not having any stab was really annoying for him, because he often did good damage, but never enough, outside of Hydro Pump against Rhydon. And that very, very, very crippling wizard weakness just basically killed almost any viability he had. My end conclusion was that he would be a underused Pokemon. And Salamence 4th Generation Jumble is surprisingly pretty good. You should watch my videos on that format if you'd like to see it. But the major difference there is not only does Salamence have Dragon Claw, giving it an actual stab move, but also you have Pokemon like Vespiquen or Maldo with Bug Stab, which means that Salamence's flying typing just makes it a good Pokemon defensively. Mega Salamence is different from both of these. It's not just completely useless in a way that normal Salamence is, but it's not going to have the defensive and offensive utility that Generation Jumbo Salamence has. It's going to have some benefits and disadvantages too. Now obviously, not having a stab move in Flying or Dragon is really bad. It means that you kind of still suffer from the same problem of not hitting as hard as you would like to, but it's not as bad. Not only is a 10 boost in attack overall just pretty good for you, not only is your defense boost to 80 to 130 just massive, but way more importantly, yeah, that 10 extra 10 in special defense is not the thing that's important. Like, that special defense boost, it helps you a little bit with some damage ranges, but that's about it. But jokes aside, the actual super important thing is your speed. 120 speed is huge. That's the exact same as Alakazam. So not only is outspeeding a lot of stuff, like for example Tauros and Starmie, not only is that a big deal, but the most important thing is that you get Alakazam's crit rate. So having a crit rate that's better than Tauros is huge for a mixed attacker. And it means that even though the actual boost to your attack isn't really that much, with your crit rate, getting crits will help you get the damage that you would absolutely want. So that's going to be the main thing that makes Salamence different. Other moves outside of the four you see on screen would be Rock Slide and Body Slam. And both have their utilities. However, I don't think either one of them is really worth it. Body Slam is just kind of bad on Salamence. Salamence hits so hard with other coverage moves that you can't really afford to use it. Not to mention, Salamence wants to be a late game cleaner with, just hitting things for crits. Not to mention, even with the better bulk, it's so very frail because of that Blizzard weakness. So Body Slam isn't really used because not only, in theory, are you only using it when most of the team is paralyzed anyways, but I've seen this a few times in the Generation Jumble tournament and for some practice replays. Body Slam a lot of times just doesn't do enough damage, even with a crit. You'd rather use Hyper Beam for a normal move, and you'd rather use Earthquake for your main attacking move. Along with Earthquake getting more damage, it also has the benefit of just generally having coverage against most commonly Gengar or Electric types. So that's good. But outside of that, these moves are definitely the best ones. Earthquake and Hyper Beam are just your physical attacking moves. They do a lot of damage, and especially with a crit, they can definitely take out things like Jinx, or technically Jinx, yeah, with Hyper Beam, but more so Chansey and Alakazam. Fire Blast is your main special move. It's not that bad in all honesty. In fact, in some ways, I'd rather spam that than spam Earthquake, because that 30% chance to burn is absolutely insane, and it means that you could just flat out like solo some Snorlax sets, relative ease. And it means Tauros can't really switch into you. Because Tauros doesn't want to take any move that you have, especially if it's a crit, and then take a Fire Blast. Even if Blizzard kills you, them getting a burn on their Tauros can kind of be game over. And Hydro Pump is only used for one Pokemon. It is only used for Rhydon, but that is more than enough because Hydro Pump is a guaranteed KO. So being able to switch into Rhydon's Earthquakes and then thread it in Oko, that's really good. Not to mention with Salamence's great crit rate and just high special attack in general, Hydro Pump against anything, even Starmie and Slowbro, is guaranteed to do some decent chip damage. So overall, it's kind of like Mega Aerodactyl, where you are still suffering a lot, but unlike Mega Aerodactyl, you have much better coverage moves, which definitely makes a world of difference. And while you're not as good defensively, and while your crit rate isn't as good, it's still pretty good in all honesty. I'd even say great. But just like Mega Aerodactyl, you do have just the raw stats to just do a lot of damage. So unlike the regular Salamence, I think Mega Salamence has a pretty good shot at being OU. I don't know for sure because, again, it's still pretty inconsistent and frail because of just its ice weakness. But I just can't see this thing being in UU. It'd definitely be too much for that tier. And I do think it's a little sad that you need these, like, absurd stats just to have a chance of being good in OU. But I think that just more so shows just how powerful Blizzard is, just in Gen 1 as a move. Just a 120-90 accuracy move with a 10% chance to just permafreeze things. That's just... it's insane. Just absolutely insane. But enough about that. Let's get into the replays, shall we? We have almost every single Gen 1 Pokemon, and you'll see what I mean. Starting off with the boy himself, Tauros. Fire Blast is like a 3-hit KO, I think. So honestly, that's... yeah, you're still not doing much better against a Tauros matchup. But still, you can do a lot of damage. And with one crit, you could probably win the 1v1. By the way, I'm just going to say this now. I won't go into a lot of detail with these matches. And if there's some where I think it's just the exact same as normal Salamence, which only really applies with one Pokemon in particular, I am not going to bother covering it, because I already made a Salamence video. So I would recommend watching that if you'd like to go more in detail. This is more so a bonus video, as well as a redemption, since I feel like for some of my videos I could have done a lot better. Now, for Snorlax. I do not know why, but for both of my replays, Fire Blast was just not getting a burn. Which, technically, is still true. Like, obviously, even with 30%, it's not always guaranteed. So I think these replays are still valid. But Mega Salamence definitely got super unlucky. Overall, though, Snorlax still has a lot of bulk to where it can tank a lot of hits. So, it's a could go either way. And even with a burn, you still have just like self-destruct or stuff like that. As you can see there, when you do get a crit, it does a heck of a lot of damage. Like a critical Fire Blast being with the 2-hit Snorlax with a crit is just really good. And for Amnesia Wax, most Amnesia Wax are running Ice Beam. So yeah, even with really good crits, it's kinda unwinnable. So for Snorlax in general, it's good to go either way. Now Salamence vs Chansey is almost the same, but not only with your added special bulk do you have a better shot at surviving Ice Beam, but also with your crit rate, you have a better chance of winning the 1v1. I'd still say it's pretty bad, but it could be a lot worse. Not to mention now, Chansey doesn't really have the ability to switch into you. And any chip damage that Chansey has already taken could be potentially fatal against a Mega Salamence. And that's something very important to remember. For a lot of these replays, it doesn't look as good because it's Salamence against a 1v1 with a full health Pokemon. But in actual practice, in a 6v6, most likely these Salamences are going to be used as revenge killers. And when that happens, obviously Salamence becomes significantly better. But even so, for some Pokemon like Alakazam, Salamence can realistically beat the 1v1. Because if Zam goes for a Paralysis with Thunder Wave, that's already pretty risky, giving Salamence a free attack in. But if you don't do that, you have a Speed type with Mence, and then it just can do a lot of damage. I can see with Earthquake, and Earthquake with a crit is just a KO. So overall, I'd say that's probably a good matchup for Zam. I mean for Mence. Yeah, for Salamence. Now for Cloyster. Rock Slide and Fire Blast do about the same. So I personally would recommend just going for Fire Blast because it's just better for most matchups. But it doesn't matter too much because even as a 3-hit KO, Cloyster can still OHKO you. But still, with Fire Blast over Rock Slide, you do have the benefit to where you can burn the Cloyster. And that's good because Cloyster doesn't necessarily like its attack being lowered because it has Explosion. So, I'm going to say the matchup is slightly better, but it's still basically unwinnable. Now, Executor is funny. A critical Fire Blast is unfortunately not enough to OHKO, but I don't think it matters. Because it now does so much damage to where, if it takes any chip damage, Executor really doesn't want to risk it. And Salamence can maybe wake up in time. Although, as you can see there, Psychic does a heck of a lot of damage. But again, Sweep Claws isn't even always, like, you have Pokemon that already put to sleep sometimes. Not sure why that was hard to say. But if Executor doesn't, or already put something else to sleep, obviously Mence does significantly better. To the point where Executor is kind of screwed. But even then, as you can see here, this is one of the better matchups. One of the much better matchups. But Salamence, unfortunately, just is still taking a lot of damage. So even against neutral hits, I would argue Salamence is still kind of frail. At the very least, it doesn't have a rival recovery, which I guess it doesn't need, but it's still a Pokemon that you can't really afford to be taking hits with. Also, as you see there with Gengar, I'm going to say Gengar doesn't bother risking Hypnosis because Earthquake does far too much. But if that's the case, Gengar just can't really hurt you at all, really. Now, hear me out here. I think that's what play for Jolteon might not be actually going for Thunder Wave. I feel like, wouldn't it be better if you could try to fish for at least one crit? Because at least one crit in a Thunderbolt, I'm pretty sure is enough to kill. But I'm not sure. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. But moving on. We have, I believe this is the multiple Jinxes. Because I wasn't sure what's the best move to use against Jinx. So I made multiple replays. Surprise, surprise, with all of them, Salamence cannot tank a Blizzard. Like, at all. So I want to see what was better between Super Effective Fire Blast, Rock Slide, and Hyper Beam. And for every single one of them, they're all basically the same. They can do most of Jinx's health, but Jinx can always just OHKO. Which means that for Jinx here, it can win, but any crit from Salamence is definitely going to be an OHKO. However, I'm going to say that Salamence does not risk it ever. Because it is just taking way too much from Blizzard. And Blizzard is always a guaranteed OHKO, while you're not always guaranteed to get the crit. The Jinx player might switch out, but I don't think that should matter to you. And like I said, Hydro Pump's always a guaranteed KO. Probably shouldn't have even bothered making that replay in the first place. But it was quick, so I figured why not. Now, Swellow is kind of weird. With crits, you can do a lot of damage. But because of Rest and Thunder Wave, Slowbro can get plenty of opportunities to set up. Which means the only way the Slowbro player loses is if you get unlucky with Paralysis. But it's, I'm going to say, pretty feasible. I think the Slowbro player could definitely survive risking a crit. Because I think a critical Hyper Beam only does 75%. Which I feel is very manageable. Which means the Slowbro can always just feasibly go for, like, Amnesias. And you have to get some chip damage in and hope you get a crit at 75% for a Hyper Beam. or Mence, which sounds about as reliable as it sounds. So Slowbro is always going to get the opportunity it needs 90% of the time. And once it gets max special, Surf is just going to be a 2 KO. Luckily with that dragon typing, you don't get completely destroyed, but it doesn't matter too much. Because even with a crit there, like on Earthquake, Swirlbolt still could have rushed off the damage and then just kept on attacking. So all Mence really does is give Swirlbolt a free chance to set up, unless it gets unlucky. We have Starmie here. I didn't bother with Zapdos, because I feel like even with the added stats, it really doesn't make too much of a difference for Zap. And not too much for Starmie here, either. Like, I guess with that added special defense and Hyper Beam, it means you can survive in a damage range, like I said before. And I think that extra attack gave you just enough to where Hyper Beam can go on a crit. But it's not super reliable. In most scenarios, Starmie is just going to kill you. And I tried testing to see how much aerial weight would do. But you can't really, like, it just doesn't work for both Gen 1, 2, 3, and probably 4. You need to get to Gen 5 custom games before you can actually test aerial weight. Which obviously here, it doesn't work as well. But it's funny. And I'm only realizing now the Hyper Beam was special. So that definitely made a difference when it came to the Jinx. I'm just going to say this now. How come Power Herb doesn't work on... Why doesn't it work on Hyper Beam and Giga Impact? That's just dumb. That shouldn't be a thing. Either way though, as you can see, like, it's not super accurate because it's in Gen 5. But now that I'm seeing the damage, that definitely would have killed if it was Giga Impact instead. So my bad. But if Mega Salamence did get aerial weight from its moves, that would definitely make it very, very strong for OU. I don't know for sure if it would be too much. Because even with, like, aerial weight, as you saw there, it isn't... Actually, it doesn't matter. Like, the Executors basically did, and probably a damage range. Yeah, it probably would be too much for OU, even without Dragon Dance. But as you can see here, without Return or Double Edge, aerial weight isn't as just overwhelmingly, like, OP as it usually is. But still incredibly strong. One of the strongest abilities of all time. Some of these need to be moved, I think. This should probably be unwinnable. And I'm not sure if Jinx should be. I think Jinx and Cloyster should still be in bad matchup. But I can be convinced of it being unwinnable. Everything else, though, I think is pretty good. So, as you can see here, Salamence, even with its Mega, suffers a lot. It has a lot of problems. I'm going to say even more problems than Jolteon and Slowbro. But I'm going to say it just barely has good enough stats and hits hard enough to where it would stay in OU. But don't expect to see it a lot. In fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if eventually it did join Borderline with Lapras and Hypno. But I don't think it would be that bad. It'd be good. And especially, like I said, like, it looks a little bit worse for these 1v1s. But definitely in a 6v6, and especially if your Salamence is not revealed yet, you take it out late game when the rest of the team is worn down, it can take a lot of KOs. So that's very important to consider. But what do you think? Do you think Mega Salamence would just be just a bigger Salamence? And by that, I mean, do you think, even with the new stats, it would just be too Blizzard weak in order to do anything at OU? Or do you think it would be great? Do you think its high attack and crit rate would just help it dominate a lot of stuff? Let me know in the comments below. I don't know what I want to do next. I think I want to do some more Megas. So, what would you rather between Mega Tyranitar or Mega Heracross? Both are videos I'm not very proud of, so I am looking forward to getting redemptions for both of them. Thank you all for watching. This is Groundback, and until next time, I look forward to hearing from you.